The gavel hitting the bench sounded exactly like a dry gunshot in the absolute silence of that courtroom. I swear, you could taste the lead in the air, but the silence after was somehow louder. ... Mr. Fitzgerald, the court hereby awards you full permanent ownership of the $180,000. Luxury residential edition, built without permission on your property, plus $47,000 in attorney fees and court costs, payable immediately by the defendants. Dead. Absolute silence for maybe 5 heartbeats and then... Oh God, then it started. Gary Sinclair, my smug, perfectly tanned HOA president, turned a shade of printer paper I didn't know existed outside of a paper mill. His wife Tiffany let out a choked, desperate little sob that sounded less like grief and more like the sound of an expensive sports car engine seizing up. That built-in meal, espresso bar, the $18,000 Italian marble island, the custom cabinetry they'd spent 8 months boasting about, all legally belonged to me, the crazy old man they'd tried to bully out of their precious community. The court clerk stamped my updated property deed. Thunk. That heavy, final sound hit harder than the gavel ever could. I watched Sinclair try to stand, but his knees just ... buckled. He collapsed right between the tables, wheezing like a landed fish, while his high-priced lawyer fanned him frantically with a sheaf of legal papers. Tiffany started screaming my name through hysterical tears, as if I were the actual villain, the thief, in this whole pathetic drama. 8 months of fake violations, targeted harassment, lies, and intimidation ended with me owning their dream kitchen edition and them owing me a check most people don't earn in a year. Turns out, the quickest way to get a free luxury kitchen remodel is to let your HOA president teach you a lesson about property lines. I walked out of that courtroom smiling, the keys to their masterpiece already cool and solid in my hand. 6 months before, I'd thought retirement meant nothing but peace and quiet in the sunshine. After my wife Eleanor passed away from cancer, and after 30 years of thankless work surveying property lines for Crestview County, dealing with boundary disputes between neighbors who acted like literal toddlers fighting over crayons, the Greenwood Estates community looked like paradise. Manicured lawns, identical bronze mailboxes, an HOA brochure promising to maintain property values through rigorous community standards. The moving truck pulled away on a Tuesday morning in late March. I was 62, officially done measuring other people's problems. Ready for a simple life maybe? Plant some heirloom tomatoes. Read classic mystery novels without my phone buzzing at dawn about some ridiculous fence dispute. My professional surveying equipment went into the back corner of the garage, neatly organized. Old habits die hard though, and I still took the occasional consulting gig when property lawyers needed an expert. Witness 30 years of experience doesn't just evaporate because you retire. The equipment was all highly professional, not some dusty commercial junk. 3 days later, she appeared. Tiffany Sinclair, the blonde highlighted Lululemon-clad image of an HOA horror story, materialized at my driveway. Clipboard clutched like a weapon of suburban destruction. "Excuse me," she said, not excusing anything, just a flat declaration of power. "I'm Tiffany Sinclair, HOA secretary. My husband, Gary, is the president. We need to discuss your storage violation." I looked at my meticulously organized garage. 2 tool cabinets, surveying equipment on proper shelves, Eleanor's garden supplies neatly boxed, ... Everything visible, yes, but organized. What storage violation? She clicked her pen click and scribbled something important. Section 12.3 of the Community Guidelines. Professional equipment must be concealed from street view. You have 7 days to remedy this or face a $50 daily fine. She handed me a photocopied notice, not even official letterhead, and strutted away like she'd just personally solved world hunger. I stood there, holding that flimsy piece of paper, thinking about Eleanor. She would have doubled over, laughing until she cried. Marcus, she'd have said, you moved to suburbia to escape property disputes, and they started one in your driveway before you even unpacked the dishes. That evening, I walked the neighborhood to get oriented. Greenwood Estates was built in 1992 on former apple orchards. I actually remembered when this area was first surveyed for development. 45 houses, each on exactly 0.25 acres, according to the original subdivision plat. Most neighbors seemed normal. The Harrisons next door were retired teachers who gave a gentle wave from their porch. Across the street, Dave Rodriguez was a detective with the county PD. We talked about his disastrous vegetable garden and swapped stories about dealing with genuinely difficult people. Then I met Gary Sinclair. His house dominated the corner lot, easily twice the size of mine, with elaborate professional landscaping that probably cost more than my annual pension. Gary answered the door, wearing golf clothes that screamed, "I have money, and I want you to know it." His handshake was too firm, too long, like a politician working a crowd. Gary Sinclair, HOA president, Hope Tiffany explained our community standards. "We work very hard to maintain property values here." She mentioned storage guidelines. I said, "Exactly. See, Marcus?" He paused, giving himself permission to use my first name. "We've built something special in Greenwood. Property values are up 20% over 5 years, but that only works if everyone follows the same rules, maintains the same standards." Behind him, I could see pristine marble floors, furniture that belonged in a magazine, the kind of kitchen renovation that costs more than most people's cars. This wasn't a guy worried about $50 in dues or property values. This was about control. "Makes sense," I said, keeping my voice utterly neutral. Good. Now, I should mention, I'm expanding my entertainment area this summer, adding a covered patio with a full outdoor kitchen. City approved it. HOA unanimously approved it. Very exciting project." He gestured proudly toward his backyard. "Might be some construction noise, but it'll add significant value to the whole neighborhood. No problem. I like seeing people improve their properties." That smile got wider, more predatory. "I knew you'd understand. Most folks around here appreciate progress. It's only the difficult residents who cause problems." Walking home, I replayed the whole conversation. Something felt deeply off about the way he overemphasized city approved and HOA approved. 30 years of surveying teaches you that people only over-explain permits when they're worried about something. Plus, that pointed comment about difficult residents. Was that a warning? But I was retired. Not my problem. Live and let live. I spent the weekend reorganizing the garage, moving the surveying gear to a back corner where it wasn't visible from the street, technically compliant with their ridiculous rule. The violation notice disappeared from my mailbox Monday morning. No acknowledgement, no thank you, just ... gone. 2 weeks later, I was settling into my perfect retirement routine. Morning coffee, afternoon walks, evening reading, quiet suburban life. Exactly what I'd wanted after decades of chaos. That's when I decided to plant tomatoes in the backyard, and that decision changed absolutely everything. Saturday morning, April 15th, perfect weather for starting my garden. I'd already sketched out where the tomatoes would go southeast corner of my backyard, where they'd get full morning sun. Eleanor always said I was obsessive about planning, but 30 years of surveying teaches you to measure twice, dig once. I grabbed my old measuring tape and headed outside to stake out the plot. That's when I heard the machinery beep 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 pan excavator backing up somewhere close, engine rumbling like thunder. I figured someone was putting in a pool. I walked toward the back fence to avoid the noise and started measuring my garden space 20 feet from the house. 10 feet wide, perfect rectangle. I was hammering in the first stake when I realized the excavator sounds were coming from directly behind me. Impossible. Behind me was just my backyard, and then the property line. I walked to the back fence and looked over. What I saw made my blood pressure spike about 40 points. A construction crew was actively pouring concrete footings for what looked like a massive addition. The excavator was parked squarely in what should have been my backyard, chewing up earth that belonged to me. "Hey," I called to the foreman. "Excuse me." He looked up from his clipboard, pulling out one earbud. "Yeah, whose property are you working on?" "Sinclair Job, adding a covered patio and outdoor kitchen." He gestured to a set of rolled-up plans on his truck. "You got a problem?" I did some quick visual measurements. The concrete truck was sitting at least 8 feet past where the property line should be, maybe 10. The excavator had dug the foundation hole completely onto my side of the boundary. "Can I see those plans?" The foreman shrugged and unrolled them. Sure enough, Sinclair Residence Outdoor Entertainment Edition. The dimensions showed the addition extending 24 feet from the existing house foundation. If Sinclair's house sat where I thought it did, that would put 12 feet of his new structure entirely on my property. "This foundation you're digging," I said carefully. How far does it extend from the house? 24 feet, like the plans show. Why? My hands were shaking slightly. Not from anger, not yet, but from the professional shock of seeing a boundary violation this blatant. Because you're building on my land. The foreman looked at me like I'd announced I was from Mars. Buddy, we got permits. City approved everything. HOA signed off. You got a problem. Take it up with the homeowner. That's when I knew this wasn't an accident. I walked straight to Sinclair's front door. Ding dong. Through the frosted glass, I saw a movement, Tiffany answered, looking annoyed at the interruption. Marcus, what brings you by on a Saturday? Need to speak with Gary about his construction project, she called over her shoulder. Honey, the neighbor wants to talk about your patio. Gary appeared, still in golf clothes, holding a Bloody Mary with extra celery, firmly in weekend relaxation mode. His smile was practiced, political. Marcus, exciting day, right? Finally breaking ground on the entertainment area. Going to be spectacular. 1,200 square feet of covered space, full outdoor kitchen, built-in grill station, really going to boost the whole neighborhood's property values. Richard, I said, I think there might be a boundary issue. His smile flickered for exactly 1 second. Then it returned, brighter and more condescending. Boundary issue. Marcus, I appreciate your concern, but everything's been professionally surveyed. City Planning Department reviewed the entire project. HOA Architectural Committee gave unanimous approval. He took a sip of his drink. Trust me, we crossed every T and dotted every I. The construction crew is digging on my property. Well, now that's quite an accusation. His voice stayed friendly, but something cold entered his eyes. You know, Marcus, property lines can be confusing for people who aren't familiar with development regulations. What looks like encroachment to an untrained eye is often just standard setback measurements. Tiffany stepped closer to her husband. Gary works very closely with the City Planning Office. He's on the Zoning Review Board, the Architectural Standards Committee. He knows exactly where property lines are. She said it like I was some confused old man who didn't understand how things worked. I surveyed properties for 30 years, I said quietly. Different era, different standards, Gary replied, waving his hand dismissively. Modern development has much more sophisticated measurement techniques, plus HOA covenants can supersede individual property interpretations when it benefits the community. That sentence hit me like a physical slap. HOA covenants superseding property rights. That's not how property law works. That's not how any of this works. Gary, property lines aren't interpretations. They're legal boundaries. Marcus's smile turned pitying. I understand you're trying to be helpful, but questioning city-approved construction projects can create unnecessary complications for everyone involved. Sometimes it's better to trust the professionals and let progress happen. The threat was subtle but clear. Challenge this, and there would be consequences. I nodded politely and walked away, but my mind was already racing. Monday morning, I was in my garage by 7 a.m., pulling out equipment I hadn't touched in 6 months. My Trimble GPS unit still in its protective case, steel survey stakes, orange flagging tape, the 300-foot measuring chain I'd used for boundary disputes across 3 counties. Time to do this properly. Professional land surveying isn't guesswork. It's math, GPS coordinates, and legal descriptions that hold up in court. After 30 years, I could run a boundary survey in my sleep. First step, find the original survey markers for my lot. Every subdivided property has iron pins driven into the ground at the corners, usually buried under years of landscaping, but they're always there. I started at my front corner, sweeping with a metal detector until I heard that familiar beep beep beep. Dug down 8 inches and found the iron pin exactly where the 1992 subdivision plat said it would be. Got you corner 2, the southeast edge. Another iron pin, this one partially exposed by erosion. I marked it with flagging tape and took GPS readings with my Trimble unit. Accurate to within 3 inches corner 3, the back of my lot where it should meet Sinclair's property line. This is where things got interesting. According to county records, my property ran 150 feet deep from the street. I measured from my front pin, 148 feet, 149 feet, 150 feet exactly, drove a temporary stake, and took the GPS coordinates. Then I looked at Sinclair's construction project. The concrete foundation they'd poured Saturday was sitting 12 feet past my survey stake. 12 full feet onto my property. His outdoor entertainment area wasn't close to the property line. It was completely across it. But that wasn't the worst part. I walked the full boundary between our lots, measuring and marking every 20 feet. What I discovered made my hands shake with professional outrage. Sinclair's addition wasn't just encroaching on my land, it was designed to encroach. The architectural plans clearly showed a 24-foot extension from his house foundation, but his house sat only 12 feet from the actual property line. He knew he had to know. I spent 3 hours documenting everything: GPS coordinates, digital photographs, measurements, cross-referenced with the original subdivision plat. By noon, I had enough evidence to stop this project cold. That's when Detective Rodriguez walked over from across the street. "Marcus, what's all the surveying equipment about?" "You working again. Boundary dispute. Neighbors building on my property." Dave looked at the stakes, the foundation, the obvious encroachment. 20 years in law enforcement teaches you to recognize when something's not right. Jesus, that's not even close. How much are we talking? 12 feet deep, 24 feet wide. About 288 square feet of my land. What's that worth? I did the quick math. Property values in Greenwood ran about $180 per square foot for developed land, around $50,000 before you factored in the structure they were building on it. Dave whistled low. "That's felony-level theft if it's intentional." "Oh, it's intentional. You talked to Sinclair yet?" "Saturday. He claims city approval supersedes property lines. That's a lie, and he knows it." Dave studied the survey stakes, then the foundation. "Marcus, I can't officially get involved in a civil property dispute, but unofficially document everything. And I mean everything. Guys like Sinclair count on people being too intimidated to fight back." That afternoon, I compiled my survey results into a formal report: GPS coordinates, boundary calculations, photographic evidence, references to the original subdivision plat, 15 pages of data that would hold up in any courtroom. Then I walked to my computer and started researching property law. Specifically, what happens when someone builds permanent improvements on land they don't own. What I found made me smile for the first time in days. Turns out, when you build on someone else's property, you don't just owe them damages. Under certain circumstances, you might accidentally give them the entire structure. Time to educate Mr. Sinclair about accession law. Tuesday morning, I found 3 different violation notices taped to my front door. Not slipped into the mailbox like normal HOA correspondence, but taped directly to the door where everyone could see them. Public humiliation tactics. Notice number 1, unauthorized surveying equipment visible from street view. $50, daily fine, effective immediately. Notice number 2, unapproved landscaping modification survey stakes constitute temporary structures requiring architectural approval. $75 daily fine. Notice number 3, harassment of approved construction. Cruises and desist all interference with community improvement projects. $100 daily fine until compliance verified. I stood there reading these notices. Doing the math, $225 per day in fines for documenting that my neighbor was stealing my land. The irony was so thick you could pour it on pancakes. The phone rang as I walked inside. "Unknown number." "Mr. Fitzgerald, this is Jason Tanner from Sinclair Development Group. Mr. Sinclair asked me to call you about your concerns regarding the Greenwood construction project." Sinclair Development Group. So, Gary wasn't just HOA president, he was running construction projects through his own company, using HOA approval to rubber stamp his own development work. The corruption was deeper than I'd thought. "What can I do for you, Mr. Tanner?" Well, Mr. Sinclair wanted to address this situation before it gets out of hand. He understands you have questions about property boundaries, and he's prepared to be very reasonable. He could offer a small adjustment to the project scope. Maybe pull the foundation back a couple of feet in exchange for your cooperation going forward, withdrawing any formal complaints, removing the survey equipment, allowing the project to proceed without further documentation. Mr. Sinclair values neighborhood harmony. He's even prepared to waive those HOA fines as a gesture of good faith. I let that sink in. Sinclair was offering to pull back a couple of feet from property he'd stolen 12 feet of, like a bank robber offering to return half the money. "Mr. Tanner, your client is building on my land without permission. That's not a negotiation. It's theft." Long pause. "Mr. Fitzgerald." I think you might be misunderstanding the legal situation here. Mr. Sinclair has city permits, HOA approval, and professional surveyor certification for this project. Challenging legitimate construction could expose you to significant liability. Liability for what? Interference with permitted construction, defamation of a licensed contractor, frivolous boundary claims. The legal fees alone could be substantial, especially for someone on a fixed retirement income. The threat couldn't have been clearer: back down or get buried in legal costs. I'll consider your offer, I said, and hung up. 20 minutes later, Tiffany Sinclair knocked on my door. This time, she brought back up 2 other women I recognized from neighborhood walks, but had never met. Marcus, we need to talk. Tiffany's clipboard was out, pen poised for battle. The HOA board has received multiple complaints about your disruptive behavior. Disruptive behavior. The woman to her left stepped forward. Suzanne Wallace from Maple Street. You've been harassing construction workers, interfering with an approved community improvement project. People are concerned about property values. The third woman nodded vigorously. Leslie Tanner from Oak Lane. My husband had to take personal time from work to address your frivolous complaints. This affects the whole community. Wait. Leslie Tanner. Jason Tanner. This was getting incestuous fast. Ladies, I'm documenting a boundary violation. You're creating drama where none exists. Tiffany interrupted. Gary has bent over backward to accommodate your concerns. He offered to modify the project, waive your fines, even include you in the planning process going forward. But you seem determined to cause problems. Suzanne Wallace pulled out her phone and started recording. Are you refusing to cooperate with the HOA board's reasonable resolution attempts? Are you recording this conversation? Community meetings are subject to documentation per HOA bylaws, Leslie Tanner said, reading from her own phone. Your refusal to engage constructively is being noted for the record. I realized what was happening. They were building a case for escalated enforcement action, recording my uncooperative behavior to justify whatever came next. I need to speak with an attorney before any further discussions, I said. Tiffany's smile turned predatory. Well, that's certainly your right, though I should mention that HOA liens for unpaid fines can accumulate very quickly. We're currently at $450 in outstanding violations, plus $50 daily compounding. By Friday, you'll owe over $800. At 30 days, we're authorized to begin foreclosure proceedings. Foreclosure, standard HOA enforcement. When residents refuse to comply with community standards and accumulate significant fine debt, the association has legal authority to place liens and, if necessary, foreclose to recover costs. She flipped through her clipboard. It's all clearly outlined in the covenants you signed when you purchased your home. I felt my chest tighten. I'd bought this house to enjoy retirement, and 3 weeks later, they were threatening foreclosure over fines for documenting theft. The easiest solution, Suzanne Wallace said, still recording, is simple cooperation. Remove the survey equipment. Stop interfering with approved construction. Accept Mr. Sinclair's generous boundary adjustment offer. This all goes away. What about the 12 feet of my property he's already built on? Alleged boundary discrepancy, Leslie Tanner corrected. Unsubstantiated by any city-approved surveyor. After they left, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at those violation notices. In 3 days, Sinclair had escalated from friendly dismissal to legal threats to foreclosure proceedings. The message was clear: accept the theft or lose my house. That's when I called Sarah Jennings. No relation to the Tanners, thankfully. Sarah was a property attorney I'd worked with on boundary disputes for years. Time to lawyer up, because if Sinclair wanted to play hardball, he'd just challenge someone with 30 years of experience playing for keeps. Sarah Jennings' law office was a converted Victorian house downtown, all hardwood floors, and legal books that actually got used. Marcus, this is fascinating. She spread my survey documentation across her conference table. 12 feet of encroachment, documented with GPS coordinates cross-referenced with the original subdivision plat. This is textbook boundary violation. The question is, what can we do about it? Several options. Injunctive relief to stop construction. Lawsuit for trespass and damages. Or, she paused, studying the survey measurements. Something more interesting. More interesting how? Tell me about the construction timeline. How much have they built so far? Concrete foundation, framing starts Monday. They're moving fast. Sarah pulled a thick legal book from her shelf, flipped to a bookmarked section. Texas Property Code, Section 23.102. When someone builds permanent improvements on another person's land without permission, the landowner can elect to keep the improvements and pay their value, or force the builder to remove them. I can keep his addition, potentially. Yes, but there's an even better option under accession law. If the improvements are substantial and removing them would cause economic waste, courts can award ownership of the improvements to the landowner without compensation to the builder. I felt something cold shift in my chest, a sudden fierce rush of vindication. You mean he builds me a free addition and gets nothing? If we play this right, exactly that. But timing is crucial. The more he builds, the stronger our case becomes. That afternoon, I watched Sinclair's construction crew frame the addition, 24 feet by 18 feet of premium lumber, engineered to support a heavy roof. They were building quality work. On my land, around 5 p.m., my doorbell rang. Gary Sinclair stood there alone, golf clothes replaced by an expensive business suit. His friendly mask was gone. "Marcus, we need to resolve this situation immediately." "I'm listening." "You're harassing my contractors, filing frivolous surveys, creating legal complications for a legitimate construction project. It stops now. Your project is 12 feet onto my property." According to an outdated survey by someone who hasn't worked professionally in 6 months, his voice was getting louder. "I have city approval, HOA approval, and a current surveyor certificate. Your amateur measurements don't trump official permits. Those permits are based on false information about the property boundaries. Prove it." He stepped closer, using his height to loom over me. "Take me to court. Spend your retirement savings on legal fees fighting the city planning department, the HOA board, and a licensed development company. See how that works out for a bitter old man with too much time on his hands?" The mask was completely off. This was the real Gary Sinclair, the bully who ran Greenwood Estates like his personal kingdom. "Gary," I said, keeping my voice level, "I documented everything. GPS coordinates, photographic evidence, cross-reference measurements. Any court will see. Any court will see a disgruntled retiree harassing his neighbors over imaginary boundary disputes." He pulled out his phone, showed me a video. It was me measuring property lines, talking to his construction crew, looking frustrated and argumentative. Uploaded to the neighborhood social media group 2 hours ago. Difficult neighbor, disrupting community improvement project, already got 47 comments supporting my position. I watched the video, cleverly edited to make me look unreasonable, confrontational. Comments rolled in. "This is why I hate old people. The HOA should fine him for harassment. Property values suffer when residents act like this. You posted this without my permission. Public property, public street, First Amendment." His smile was vicious. "Now, Marcus, you're fighting a war you can't win. I have connections at City Hall, 15 years on the HOA board, and legal resources you can't match. Walk away now. Accept my generous boundary adjustment offer, and this ends quietly. Keep fighting, and I'll bury you in paperwork and legal fees until you're broke." He walked away but turned back at the driveway. "Oh, and Marcus, those HOA fines are now at $1,200 compounding daily. At $50,000 in unpaid violations, we're legally authorized to foreclose. Might want to consider how long you can afford your principals." That evening, I called Dave Rodriguez. 20 years in law enforcement, he understood escalation patterns. "Marcus, this guy's following the classic bully playbook. Isolation, financial pressure, reputation damage, escalating consequences. Question is, what's his end game? Keep my property, I guess." "No, think bigger. If he's running development projects through his own company and using HOA authority to approve them, this isn't about one addition. This is about a business model." Dave was right. I pulled up the Crestview County permit database online, searched for Sinclair Development Group. What I found made my stomach drop. 17 different projects in the last 5 years, all in HOA-managed communities, all with Richard Sinclair on the Architectural Review Board or in HOA leadership. Pool installations, home additions, landscaping projects, millions of dollars in development work, all pre-approved by HOAs that Sinclair controlled. "Dave, I think I stumbled into something bigger than a property dispute." "How much bigger?" "Systematic corruption. He's using HOA positions to funnel development contracts to his own company. That's fraud. multiple counts, potentially federal if he's crossing state lines or using mail systems. The next morning, I found a new surprise in my mailbox. Not an HOA violation, but a cease and desist letter from Sinclair Development Group's attorney demanding I've stopped defamatory statements about their business practices and threatening a lawsuit for tortious interference with contract. But here's what Gary Sinclair didn't know about retired county surveyors. We're stubborn. We document everything, and we have really good relationships with investigative journalists. Time to make some phone calls. Sarah Chen from the Crestview Herald had covered HOA corruption stories before 3 Pulitzer nominations for investigative journalism and a personal hatred of petty tyrants with clipboards. When I called her Thursday morning, she was interested immediately. Property theft through HOA manipulation. Marcus, this is exactly the kind of story that goes viral. Can you prove the boundary violation? GPS coordinates, original survey plats, photographic documentation. Plus, I found 17 other Sinclair development projects, all in communities where Gary sits on the HOA board. Holy, this isn't just theft, it's systemic fraud. We met Friday afternoon at a coffee shop downtown. I brought my entire evidence folder, survey reports, permit applications with false boundary descriptions, the cease and desist letter, screenshots of Sinclair's social media posts attacking me. Sarah's eyes got wider with each document. Marcus, this is incredible. Look at this pattern. He gets elected to HOA leadership, changes architectural guidelines to favor his projects, then uses his development company to capitalize on the changes. That's criminal conspiracy. Can you publish it? Can I publish it, Marcus? This story writes itself. HOA president steals neighbor's land for a personal development project. It's got everything: corruption, bullying, David versus Goliath. Social media will eat this up. The article went live Sunday morning with the headline, HOA president built luxury addition on neighbor's property, then threatened foreclosure when caught. Sarah had done her homework. Photos of the encroachment with clear measurement markers, copies of the threatening HOA violation notices, screenshots of Sinclair's social media posts, a sidebar explaining property law and homeowner rights, most damaging. A list of all 17 Sinclair development projects with dates showing when Gary joined each HOA board. The story exploded. By noon, it had 15,000 shares on Facebook. The neighborhood social media group where Sinclair had posted his edited video of me was flooded with comments supporting my position. This is why I hate HOAs. Property theft should be prosecuted criminally. Someone needs to investigate all his other projects. My phone started ringing. Neighbors I'd never met, calling to apologize for believing Sinclair's version. 3 other Greenwood residents admitted they'd had boundary disputes with HOA-approved projects, but were too intimidated to fight. The Harrisons from next door knocked on my door Sunday evening. Marcus, we owe you an apology. We saw Gary's video and thought you were just being difficult, but after reading that newspaper article, Mrs. Harrison shook her head. We measured our own property line where it meets the Sinclair's new fence from last year. It's 4 feet onto our land. 4 feet, Gary told us the fence was a replacement, same location as the old one. We trusted him because he's HOA president. Now we realize he moved it when he thought we wouldn't notice. Mr. Harrison handed me a folder. We documented everything this weekend. Photos, measurements, property records. Would your lawyer be interested? Monday morning brought more phone calls. A reporter from Channel 8 News wanted to interview me. The Crestview County District Attorney's office had received multiple complaints and was opening a preliminary inquiry into Sinclair Development Group's HOA contracts and potential fraud. The game was over. Sarah Jennings and I allowed the construction to continue for another 3 weeks, long enough for the walls to go up, the roof to be sealed, and the custom windows to be installed. We didn't file the injunction until the Italian Marble Island was delivered and the expensive built-in appliances were sitting in crates on the driveway. That's when we hit them. The lawsuit was a masterpiece, a claim for quiet title combined with an injunction to stop construction, and a simultaneous motion to dismiss the HOA's foreclosure attempt due to bad faith, malicious enforcement, and retaliatory action. We presented the judge with the full report. The original 1992 plat, my 3-inch accurate GPS coordinates, the photographic evidence of the 12-foot encroachment, and, crucially, the 20-page exhibit detailing Sinclair's 17 other projects and his pattern of HOA manipulation. Gary Sinclair's lawyer tried to argue mistake, accidental misreading of the blueprints, and generous neighborly offer to compensate. Sarah just showed the judge the 3 HOA violation notices and the $1,200 fine accumulation against me. "Your Honor," she said, "this was not a mistake. This was a deliberate attempt to steal 24 feet of land, followed by an immediate, malicious attempt to foreclose on my client's home when he dared to document the truth. The defendant built a structure that cannot be reasonably removed without destroying over $200,000 of materials. We asked the court to apply the doctrine of accession and award the permanent structure to the rightful landowner. Mr. Fitzgerald, without compensation to the defendant, as a remedy for theft and malicious trespass, the final hearing was just 3 weeks later. And that's where the story began, with the sound of the gavel and the utter defeat on Gary Sinclair's face. After the judge's ruling, after Sinclair collapsed, after his wife's hysterical screaming faded into the corridor, I felt a strange sense of calm. It wasn't just victory, it was justice. I had simply done my job, the same job I'd done for 30 years, measured the line, found the truth, and stood my ground. Gary Sinclair thought his money, his connections, and his petty HOA power could erase a boundary line. He learned the hard way that a property line, backed by a county plat and a lifetime of surveying experience, is one of the most stubborn legal facts in the world. And now I had a brand new luxury outdoor kitchen addition with an Italian marble island. I'll admit, the first thing I cooked on their built-in grill was the heirloom tomato I'd finally managed to plant in the real southeast corner of my yard. I sent an email to the Sinclair Development Group with the subject line, "Moving In." The body of the email contained only one sentence. "Please send the instruction manuals for the meal. Espresso bar, the keys are on the counter." So, what do you think? Was the judge right to award me the entire $180,000 addition? Or should I have been forced to pay Gary Sinclair for the materials he used, even though he stole my land and tried to bankrupt me? I've been sleeping great, but part of the neighborhood still says I took things too far. Let me know your honest opinion in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about how HOA bullies finally get what they deserve.